Let's be honest. When you think of the bladder, you probably picture something pretty simple, right? Maybe just a storage bag. But what if I told you it's actually one of the most sophisticated, high-tech pieces of engineering in the entire human body? Seriously. We're going to dive into this because the bladder is so much more than a passive balloon. It's an intelligent, dynamic, and frankly, brilliant organ. And all that intelligence is there to solve one massive engineering problem. Think about it. How can your body build an organ that can hold liquid for hours at a super low, safe pressure, and then in a split second, turn itself into a high-pressure hose to empty completely? That is the paradox, the central puzzle we are going to unravel right now.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with that core storage and release problem. Then we'll peek inside at its incredible multi-layered design and the tiny muscle crew that powers the whole thing. From there, it's all about the brain's command center, what happens when the wiring gets messy, and finally, a look at what the future holds for keeping our bladders healthy.
Okay, so this is the absolute key to understanding the bladder, its split personality. On one hand, it has to be a low-pressure tank. As it fills up, the pressure inside should barely, and I mean barely, go up. But then it has to completely switch gears and become a powerful pump to get the job done efficiently. Two totally different jobs, one organ. You know, there's a technical term for this superpower, and it's called compliance. It's just this incredible ability to stretch without building up pressure. And this is so important, because if that pressure gets too high while it's storing urine, that pressure can actually push backward up into the kidneys and cause some serious long-term damage. So yeah, low pressure isn't just about comfort, it's a critical safety feature. So how on earth does it pull this off? Well, like any great piece of engineering, it all comes down to the materials. The bladder wall isn't just one layer. It's this multi-layered marvel, built from some of the most specialized biological stuff you can imagine. The first line of defense, the very innermost lining, is called the urothelium. Now, don't just think of this as wallpaper. No way. This is an incredibly advanced high-tech barrier. Its number one job? To keep all the waste products in urine completely separate from your body's tissues and your bloodstream. And how does it make such a perfect seal? Get this. The surface is covered in these amazing proteins called uroplakins. They assemble themselves into these hexagonal, tile-like plates that fit together perfectly. It's like biological chainmail. This shield is so tight, it's almost completely waterproof, which is a huge deal for preventing infections, because it physically blocks nasty bacteria like E. coli from ever getting a grip.
Okay, right underneath that chainmail shield, you find this fibrous layer that perfectly shows off the bladder's two-sided nature. It's made of two proteins, collagen and elastin. Think of collagen as the steel rebar in concrete. It gives the wall strength and structure so it doesn't just burst when it's full. And then you have elastin, which is like a whole network of tiny rubber bands, giving the bladder that amazing ability to stretch and then snap back into shape. It's this perfect balance of strength and flexibility.
All right, now we're going even deeper. We're heading into the bladder's engine room, the muscle layer, which is called the detrusor muscle. This is where all the power for emptying comes from. And let me tell you, this is a very special kind of muscle. See, this is totally different from the skeletal muscle in your arm that you decide to flex. The bladder is made of smooth muscle. And that means a few things. First, it's involuntary. You don't have to consciously think about making it work. And second, it's built for slow, powerful, sustained contractions. Not quick bursts of power, but a long, strong squeeze. It is the perfect tool for the job. So how does that squeeze actually happen? It's like a beautiful four-step chemical dance. First, a signal arrives from a nerve. That signal opens the floodgates for calcium to rush into the muscle cell. That flood of calcium then acts like a key in an ignition, turning on the contraction machinery. But here's the really clever part. At the same time, another pathway is activated that literally blocks the off switch, making sure that squeeze is strong, solid, and lasts long enough to get the job done right. Okay, we've seen the high-tech materials and the powerful engine, but none of that works without an incredibly sophisticated command and control system. So let's zoom back out and look at the amazing neural network that connects your brain to your bladder. So while your bladder is filling, you can think of the storage team as being on duty. This is your sympathetic nervous system. It's sending out two main commands. First, it tells the bladder wall muscle to relax and expand. Second, it tells the muscle at the bottom, the bladder neck, to tighten up and keep the gate closed. And just for good measure, your voluntary nerves keep a second gate, the external sphincter, clamped shut too. But then, when it's time to go, a total flip-flop happens. The storage team gets the signal to stand down, and the voiding team, your parasympathetic nervous system, punches in. It sends one massive signal to the bladder muscle saying, squeeze hard, while at the exact same time, the signal holding that external sphincter shut is turned off. It's a perfectly timed, perfectly coordinated handoff. And who's the air traffic controller for this whole operation? Deep in your brainstem, there's a little region called the Pontine Micturition Center, the PMC. You can think of it as the master switch that automatically coordinates the store and void reflexes. But, and this is the amazing part, the higher centers in your brain, your conscious mind, have the final veto power. They give the ultimate go or no-go decision, which is why you can choose when and where this all happens. So you can see it's an incredibly intricate system. And when any piece of it, the materials, the muscles, the wiring, starts to break down, well, that's when you run into dysfunction. One of the big culprits that research points to is something called ischemia, which is really just a lack of blood flow and oxygen. This source makes a really critical point. If the bladder tissue isn't getting enough blood, the super delicate nerves inside the bladder wall can get damaged. And once those nerves are damaged, they can start misfiring, sending out faulty signals that lead to those messy, uncoordinated contractions you see in an overactive bladder. And remember that perfect balance of collagen and elastin we talked about? Well, poor compliance, that inability to store at low pressure, often happens when that balance gets totally wrecked. The bladder wall can get stiff and rigid because it's built up too much of that structural collagen, or it's lost its stretchy elastin, or the muscle itself is just too revved up to relax properly. All of this can lead to a really common condition, detrusor overactivity, which you've probably heard of as overactive bladder, or OAB. This is basically the bladder's engine misfiring. It's squeezing when it's supposed to be relaxing and storing, and that can be caused by those damaged nerves we just mentioned, or sometimes from the muscle cells themselves just getting overly twitchy and sensitive. But it's not all doom and gloom, not at all. Our understanding of this incredible organ is getting deeper every single day, and that new knowledge is opening up some really exciting possibilities for better treatments down the road. The future here is all about being precise. Scientists are now using omics research that's analyzing everything from genes to proteins to find the unique biological fingerprints for different bladder diseases. Imagine tailoring drugs specifically to your genetic code. We're also seeing advances in tissue regeneration, using stem cells to literally rebuild damaged parts of the bladder. And on the electrical side, there are these amazing neuromodulation techniques that can help retune and correct the faulty communication lines between the brain and the bladder. Which really leaves us with this final big picture thought. The bladder is a true marvel of biological engineering. There's no doubt about it. And as we keep decoding its secrets from its molecular chainmail all the way up to its complex neural command center, the ultimate goal starts to come into focus. Can we move beyond just managing symptoms? Can we one day get so good at understanding this system that we can prevent it from ever breaking down in the first place?